Welcome to another episode of Talking Fast, a Gilmore Girls podcast. I'm Suzanne.
And I'm Alexis.
And we're two longtime fans of the show, and we're excited to rewatch and recap it along the way.
This week we're recapping Season 1, Episode 17, Breakup Part 2. Netflix bio for this one reads as, after recent events, Rory keeps busy, refusing to give in to self-pity. Meanwhile, Stars Hollow residents rally around her, much to her dismay. It seems like the description didn't want to get into spoilers, like certain events, but the title of the episode itself is a major spoiler, so I was kind of having mixed feelings looking at those.
Yeah, seriously. I have known that this episode was coming, but it's still a hard episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's not hard like the episode with all the fights and stuff. It's just like I don't know. A lot happens in kind of quiet ways. If that makes any sense. I don't know. We'll see.
I had a lot of fun in a weird way. I think I was enjoying the drama of it all. And some of it wasn't as bad as I expected. I mean, it was bad, don't get me wrong, but I feel like we've, experienced worse.
Yeah, I did actually, laugh out loud at one point in this episode, which I don't think I've done for a while.
Yeah, I had 2 moments of laughter. Major laughter, actually, but...
It's promising.
Yeah.
Okay, should we get right to it and start with our talking fast? Oh, gosh.
Yes, let's do it. Okay. Are you ready?
Yep, okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
So we start off right after the breakup, and Lorelai is trying to convince Rory to wallow, but Rory doesn't want to wallow, so the next morning she wakes up with a list of things that they have to do around town, and it's a lot of random shopping and stuff, and they try to go to Luke's, but Rory refuses to go on any of their regular paths. And then they get to Luke's, and the news has already spread across town, who knows how. And then Rory decides to go to a party that night with Lane, and Lorelai goes and meets up with X. Okay.
That was good.
Okay. There's still a lot in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you ready to pick up the slack?
Don't be so hard on yourself, but sure, I'll try.
Okay, ready and go.
Yeah, so we're picking up post-breakup. There's disagreements between Lorelai and Rory about how to get over a breakup, and it's compounded by the fact that Lorelai realizes she's not really over Max, so she goes to visit him. They hook up. They decide to keep talking. Meanwhile, Rory goes to Chilton as a way to kind of try to cope, and she ends up kissing Tristan at that party. Lane meets a new guy, Henry, and Sookie and Jackson are cooking. Well, Jackson's cooking. Sookie's mad about it.
That was good.
Thanks.
I also love that you got in the Sookie and Jackson part, which was a great scene.
Yeah, Lorelai went to just ask Sookie to borrow her car, so it really could have been any kind of scene from, nothing to what we got, which was everything. Such a delightful display of their relationship and its uniqueness. But we're getting ahead, so we can slow down and go in more of a chronological order. I think listeners would appreciate that. So, breakup part 2. Same scene. We pick up in the same scene. I don't know if we've seen that before. I think it's kind of cool and shows you that. It's very dramatic, I feel.
Yeah, it really makes it feel like there was a cliffhanger. And a lot of the time with this show, we've picked up a week later or a couple weeks later, or we just don't know the time frame. Mm-hmm. So this, it's nice to know that we are the exact moment last episode ended. Nothing has happened. There's been no progression. Mm-hmm. So we get to see what happens.
I feel like it's a sign of a complicated storyline to be we couldn't even end it there. We had to continue it across another episode. And that method can, I think, serve a story. In this moment, I think it worked. And sometimes I think it's a method that does not work. The Bachelor keeps trying to do this the past few seasons, have a cliffhanger before a rose ceremony, which just ignores the structure of their episodes. We could talk way too much about that.
And then they give trailers that spoil the rose ceremony. So,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we already
but it
know
works here.
there's no rose for Rory and Dean because they've broken up. And in this continued conversation between Lorelai and Rory, it goes in a direction I wasn't initially expecting, because last episode closed on this hug, this really close moment between them. But then when they break away in this episode, we see that Rory is not really willing to share information with Lorelai yet about what has happened. And this whole conversation between them is really Rory kind of panicking, while also not wanting to like disclose anything that happened. So Lorelai's really questioning her, like, did he try to push you to go too far? She was really trying to just sort out, but no answers are provided in this evening.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see that this kind of reluctance on Rory's part leads Lorelai to thinking that Dean broke up with Rory. As like something was wrong with Rory, which wasn't quite the case. But yeah, I thought this was an interesting scene. We get a lot of like the little memorabilia and stuff from Rory and Dean's relationship. It's all boxed up along with, what was the chicken's name? Like Colonel Cluck or something like that.
Yeah, anything he looked at or touched, like it's a really wide net. She throws away a brand new sweater.
Yeah, because he liked it.
Yeah, and that the sweater, as well as Lorelai's efforts to find out information and to comfort Rory, are related to my Friday night dinner critique. I actually struggled to pick a moment for the critique, so this is a bit arbitrary in a sense, and I don't want to repeat what we've said too much, but this was a continued critique of the jokes that they include that I think we've pointed out are just in poor taste and wouldn't be included to today. So the example from this opening scene is that Rory points out this sweater and she says she wants to throw it away because Dean said she looked beautiful in it. And then the follow-up line is that he said her eyes looked really blue, and Lorelai says, well, that means he's gay. So just like yet another thoughtless, not funny line, meant to like service the whole Lorelai trying to cheer up Rory after this breakup thing, but really just like this continued homophobic kind of joke that's included without much thought. Like I said, I don't want to repeat what we've already like I think successfully made this critique, so now it's just to the point of keeping tabs on it, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like a lot of the problem in this joke specifically was like the person saying it and the audience. Like I could see this kind of joke working with a completely different audience and like somebody maybe who is actually gay saying it.
Yeah.
So it's not so much like Lorelai just stereotyping people. That could have been more funny, but in this case she's just doing it to get a reaction, and we know it's just stereotyping. So yeah, I agree. I was disappointed to already have another one of those so soon after our last one. And it doesn't really get much of a reaction out of Rory, which is good, but of course she's not reacting to very much. So Rory asks Lorelai to get rid of her box of paraphernalia. Lorelai says that she will. She says it'll sleep with the fishes, which I thought was a fun line. But in the end, she ends up just putting it in the closet and hiding it. This kind of gives like a bit of foreshadowing and also just another point of view of how Lorelai's reacting to this situation, which is she doesn't necessarily think maybe it's over completely between them, or she thinks that maybe Rory's overreacting or something like that, when she'll regret getting rid of all that stuff in the future. So I thought that was a cool little sign of Lorelai just kind of making sure that Rory would have what she needed in the future, even and still what she needs at the moment, which is to not see the fancy dress and everything.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Yeah, I think...
It's a nice dress.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of Lorelai attempting to, like, counsel or advise or help Rory get through this breakup throughout this whole episode, and this is a good early instance of that. Like, yeah, in the heat of the moment, she never wants to see these things again, but Lorelai, from her own experience, knows that might not be the case. For example, that brand new sweater. Maybe you'll be willing to wear it again someday.
Hopefully.
So Lorelai basically says, go to bed, Rory. You know, like, clearly they're not getting anywhere on this topic that night. And this proceeds to the next scene, in which Rory wakes up Lorelai at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Disturbing.
Which is inhumane.
I know. Disturbing what I think Lorelai points out to be a very good schedule for the weekend, which is that Saturday is for pre-rest and Sundays for rest. And you need the pre-rest to make sure that you're well rested to enjoy your second day of rest, which I love.
Agree. Yeah. I always feel like weekends should be 3 days ideally, because you need to, like, run all your errands and do your laundry and stuff, but then you do need those 2 days of rest.
Completely. And God forbid you, like, go away for the weekend or something and that throws off everything.
Yeah, then it's basically like working 2 weeks straight without a break. But poor Lorelai, waking up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday is very rough, and she looks very angry about it, or just kind of like flabbergasted that it's happening.
Yeah.
But Rory, like, starts setting out her clothes and everything, and soon we go downstairs and see that she's completely rearranged the entire living room in a completely, like, illogical way, with everything facing away from the TV and the sewing bust, like, just out in the middle of the floor. Which Lorelai rightly questions as soon as she comes downstairs. Is a bit confused about how they're going to watch TV.
Yeah, and we quickly discover Rory's plan for getting over this breakup is to make herself as busy as possible. And this sets into motion this, like, continued conversation between Lorelai and Rory about, like, how best do you grieve a relationship and move on, heal from the breakup. And I think it's, like, it's not so easy to say, like, Lorelai's right, Rory's wrong. But I think we'll see. It will kind of figure out Rory's method. Like, no, she doesn't have to wallow exactly like Lorelai would suggest, but her method, she really is not processing or dealing with anything. It's more so, like, burying it, and it's bubbling up in bad ways later on. We'll see, but I did think it was a good theme of the episode, the conversation of how do you heal from a relationship. It could look like a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think we could also question whether Lorelai's tactic is actually successful, at least in her case. But I agree. I'm kind of the mind that, like, you do whatever you have to in the moment, which I think is exactly what Rory's doing. But at the same time, there's only so long you can keep doing everything, like keeping yourself as busy as possible.
Right.
And as we see by the end of the episode, like, that catches up with her. She can't go shopping forever. Though maybe Emily would help her with that.
That's a good point. So after Lorelai agrees to do the list with Rory, I think we mentioned that the list is what Rory has created to, like, give herself a schedule throughout this whole day. And so the first thing on that list would naturally be going to Luke's for breakfast and coffee, right? But this is complicated by the fact that Rory is not willing to go by the school or by the market. And this was the sign that, to me, like, oh, it's not just about keeping yourself busy. This is a sign that it's not quite healthy if it's, like, preventing you from doing, like, a normal routine. That's when maybe something needs to be processed. I'm no professional therapist or anything like that, but they end up having to go through this alley full of garbage, it seems like, and the lighting is not very good in the scene at all. So I was like, what set is this? It seemed to be a struggle to film in it, but it was funny.
It was also strange, like, why was that alley there? I mean, I know in every town there's going to be some places that are like less kept up or something, but it almost looked like that was just like an in-town landfill type thing where people are just dumping their trash. And they're not in a city, so it's not like it would be an alley where trash is picked up from. So I was very confused about the whole logistics of that.
I just had a thought. What if that is the alley that is transformed into that alley bar in the revival? Wouldn't that be a fun backstory?
Yeah, that'd be cool. I did like their conversation in this alley, though. Rory posits that you can learn a lot about people from looking at their trash, which I thought was very true, very astute. She talks about, like, you learn about their eating habits and what they are doing, like if they're paying their bills on time and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure that's what archaeologists do for people long past. If I remember my intro to archaeology classes and all of the archaeology I have to read for my dissertation correctly, one of the places that people find the most information, like the most artifacts and stuff, is in the trash heaps of old towns. Because you can find like broken pottery and stuff that was thrown out into a trash heap, and the different kinds of food and all that kind of stuff. So like in the rest of the town where people, if they left, they probably took their stuff with them, or it was nicer things, so they'd handed it down generations. You wouldn't really have artifacts from that, but from a trash heap you would. So I feel like Rory here is really, showing that she could be an archaeologist in the future.
Yeah, maybe she'll consider that path if her Gilmore book doesn't work out in the end. So they make their way through the archaeology potential trash heaps of the alley. And they do safely arrive at Luke's, where we find Rachel acting as the waiter in the scenario. Or not wait. I guess I don't know what Luke is really, because he kind of like waits tables but also takes orders. And either way, she's working at Luke's. And wearing this like red and black and white flannel, which my hypothesis is that's like Luke's shirt, right? I mean, come on. Like, who do we see wearing flannels? Well. Yeah. But Luke's is more crowded than we have ever seen, because Rory says this is the 6 a.m. crowd, which is apparently a thing.
Weird.
And they sit down. Rory and Lorelai are talking. Rory has this premonition that everyone knows that she's gone through the breakup. Lorelai assures her, no one knows. But she, seconds later, goes to talk to Miss Patty, who asks her about the breakup. And this was like one of those moments where I'm like, it feels like it's not a real town. It feels like the minute it happened, every person there just magically knew, because I'm like, realistically, Miss Patty would not know. Like, Rory didn't tell, Lorelai didn't tell. Are you telling me Dean told Miss Patty? Or I don't know, but it's like an uncanny effect almost.
Maybe he told his sister, who had dance class with Miss Patty at 5 a.m. and she told her.
Yeah, or he told his mom. Maybe she goes to that like sunrise yoga at Miss Patty's.
Oh, yeah.
I guess we could trace it if we needed to.
I had my Stars Hollow moment in this scene. It wasn't the Miss Patty moment, but it was when Kirk comes over and is like talking to Rory, and kind of he wants to apologize for not having noticed about this floppy-haired guy and like what a bad sign he was. And this felt more like Kirk to me than some of the other scenes we've had of him recently. But it also just it kind of shows how protective the town is of Rory. I thought it was cute, especially because Kirk wouldn't leave without Lorelai accepting the apology. It's just like an awkward time for everybody involved, which is exactly what Kirk brings to a scene. Awkwardness.
Yeah, this felt like much truer to the essence of Kirk that we know and love, I think.
Mm-hmm.
My gazebo moment was actually in this scene too, with the one other main character we haven't addressed yet, Luke. This was one of my like laugh out loud kind of moments where Lorelai informs Luke that Dean broke up with Rory, and my favorite part was Luke's reaction to this. We've seen this before, this like overprotectiveness of Rory in a way that's done that I like still at this moment. I don't know if I'll always like it. It might feel a little like paternalistic or something at a certain point, but here it's like I just love it. He's like, I knew that kid was trouble. Does he think he's gonna do better than Rory? Good riddance. He says good riddance in a variety of languages, including hasta la vista. I love the anger. And at one point he's like, I swear I'd love to, but he like cuts himself off from like, a physical threat toward Dean, and instead he finishes with like, I'll add whipped cream to the pancakes. So I just loved like the display of affection through the whipped cream and the chocolate chip pancakes that Lorelai requested for Rory. Later on, we do see the physical part, which I have mixed feelings about. I think it was mostly funny. I guess we could just go there, I think. Luke sees Dean out the window, and Dean is coming in for coffee, and Luke, like, rushes outside, says, you can't come in here, and they start, like, fumbling around. I can't even call it a fight, truly.
But just, like, pushing each other.
Yeah, and then Luke does kind of get Dean in a headlock, which is pretty funny physical humor. And it results in Luke saying he started it, which is, like, so childish. I think that's why I kind of liked it. I thought the tone was pointing out that this was childish defense of Rory in this way, rather than being like, oh, the masculine thing to do is to go beat up someone's ex-boyfriend. Like, it didn't take that tone, I don't think.
Yeah. This was actually my gazebo moment.
Yay!
Was this fight. Not necessarily like the fighting part of it, but when Lorelai and Rory were sitting inside, and like through the window you see Luke and Dean like fighting with each other, and then when Lorelai's pulling Luke off and she has to like Luke or Dean tries to walk past him again, and Luke darts out for him again, and then Lorelai has to pull him back again. It was just like a whole bunch of kind of physical comedy. Lorelai did bring up a great point, which is Dean is only 16, so that was definitely not a great thing for Luke to do.
No.
Attack a child, basically. But it was pretty funny, and I felt like, the main reason of it was just overprotectiveness of Rory.
Absolutely.
Which was cute. I mean, I guess we could probably critique it, but I just enjoyed it. I thought it was funny.
I know. I chose not to. I have that option.
Yeah. We can do what we want on our own podcast.
It's true. So they continue with their list off screen. When we return to the next scene, they're returning home. Babette rushes in as well, hoping to provide advice to Rory because she's known a lot of truly awful men, she says. She was pushed out of a moving car once. I want to know more about Babette's history.
Yeah. I want a Babette and Miss Patty spin-off.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like maybe a Golden Girls type thing, just probably a little bit more raunchy than all four of the Golden Girls were. But
which is saying something.
I guess I know. I've only seen like maybe the first few seasons of that show, so I can't really talk to the whole thing. But
at this point, Rory avoids Babette. She doesn't want to have a conversation about her breakup. So she goes into her room and lays down on the bed, and she starts to wallow. But she catches herself. And at this point, she like looks in her book bag and pulls out the flyer for Madeline's party that we heard about last episode. And I think this is a sign, this is when we know she's truly down, from a breakup to, like, she chooses to go to this Chilton party. Like, you have to be in a low place.
Yeah, seriously. I would have been like Paris. I would have had to be forced to go, and then I'd be watching my clock the whole time.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you went to any parties in high school.
I I didn't go to this kind of party. Most of the kinds of I wouldn't even call them parties that I went to in high school. I would just go to a friend's house with maybe like 4 or 5 other people and drink and watch movies. So I wouldn't even call it a party like this. I definitely avoided parties like this like the plague. That would be torture for me. Did you go to any big parties?
Not really. It was similar to just hang out with my friends, and I barely even knew about the existence of parties that were going on with like my school didn't even truly have a popular clique like you would see in the movies, but there were definitely like groups of people that I would say maybe had more social status if we were to push that or whatever. But I guess they had parties. I feel like I've heard about them a little bit more now after the fact, but they were not even on my radar. And I don't know. I don't want to say I don't want to reveal too much that would get me in trouble or anything. But I think my first drink I ever had, my family took my older sisters and I on like a senior trip to Greece, which was really, really super cool. And the drinking age there, like my parents allowed me to have a few drinks while we were all like on the trip. So my first drink was like a mango mojito or something. It was actually like a fantastic, like a drink that actually tastes good. It wasn't like UV blue vodka and lemonade or something, which I did have shortly thereafter, but not on that trip. But I was not much of a party goer.
I think my first drink of alcohol was probably some hard liquor, and then my friends and I would just like most of the time we had this one friend whose parents were never around and they always had a full liquor cabinet, so we would just like mix stuff. It was terrible. I remember throwing up so much. A bad idea. Don't do that, children.
Yeah, we know. We've seen our stats. We know we have some younger listeners. Learn from our mistakes. If you're gonna drink,
stick to one liquor at a time, okay?
That's funny. I definitely did not have anyone at my high school that had a house like Madeline, though.
Yeah, same.
It was like palatial, as Rory and Lane point out when they get there. But we had one more scene before they actually arrived at the party, or maybe a couple scenes actually. What a packed episode.
We get to see them, or Lane and Rory, getting ready, and this is where I put my Lorelai's closet moment for Lane's hair specifically, which was like that style that everybody wanted to have but could never achieve on their own, which is just like straight until like the last 2 inches, and then they're extremely flipped out in the last couple inches, and it's impossible to do. I remember when I was in elementary school, I wanted this hairstyle so much, but I would like curl the ends and then it would just curl inward, or I didn't use enough hairspray or something. I don't know. It's an impossible style, but I loved it on Lane. She probably just has thicker hair, and that probably helps. But yeah, I loved it.
And the benefit of a whole styling team.
That's true.
To like refresh them if the curls do fall out. They just probably have a hot curling iron ready to go. I agree. True. It's cute. It's cute. Besides, the hair and the getting ready, the scene... The only other thing I would point out is that Rory catches sight of the cornstarch, iconic cornstarch, practically a character in the show. She realizes she forgot to throw it away, so Lorelai takes it and she puts it back in the box in the closet because the box is not with the fishes, like she told Rory. And while she's doing that, she catches a glance at her own box, which I think we can assume is her Max box, or just a boyfriend box in general that has some of Max's stuff in it, including the book that shall not be named because we already named it enough times, that she had tried to return to him. And she like starts to reminisce, and this is also related to the fact that at the diner earlier, Rory had asked Lorelai, how did she get over Max? How long did it take her? And Lorelai wasn't able to provide an answer, and it's made her realize, I think alongside seeing the box, that like, she misses Max, which we'll see later. We'll learn more about that.
Yeah, I also wondered, I mean, we kind of talked about this last week, whether Rachel's appearance has anything to do with this, like, reinvigorated thoughts for Max, especially because, as you mentioned, she was, like, wearing Luke's clothes, she was working in the diner, like, she very much had a claim on Luke that morning, so I wonder if that kind of subconsciously got into Lorelai also. It was like, she needs to have a claim on a man or something, or maybe her backup, which is what is, like, clearly not available now, so she needs to rethink things.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about the Rachel component of it all because it was so busy in that scene with Luke's, so much going on. But I think you're super right that to see Rachel like that and in that position of, like, she got Luke to do something he didn't want to do through her like sweet talk and meds, which is questionable. That, like, we've only ever seen Lorelai be able to do that. So I definitely think that could make her feel a bit insecure and want to think, like, who's a person that I could have that sway over, or who would, like, give me that confidence because I could, like, be with someone, again. And I think we could say something similar about Rory and how she approaches Tristan later on too.
Yeah, that's true. Should we cover the Lorelai stuff first and then go to the party, or?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. And we get to go to Sookie's first, so that makes it fun.
Yeah. So Lane and Rory supposedly go off to the party, and we'll catch up with them later, but Lorelai goes to Sookie's house, which seems kind of out of the blue at first. And Sookie and Jackson are having quite the night. Jackson is cooking for Sookie, which, as you can imagine, is putting Sookie a little bit on edge, you might say.
Yeah, for her to be out of control, she feels like so powerless, and it's so funny.
She's, like, watching through a crack in the door and yelling suggestions to Jackson. She has a dishwasher diagram. I thought a lot of this actually kind of brought me back to my idea that Sookie might be somebody we could read as on the autism spectrum, because she does have such clear, like, ways that she likes to have things done in her own house that bring her peace, and make her feel kind of like it's her foundation in her own house that these things are done this way, which could also kind of problematize what Jackson is doing with pushing that out, like, and, like, putting her in such distress. But we also, like, kind of see it, like, she consented to this. So it's just kind of maybe a obstacle that she needs to get past for their relationship to move forward and combine their different routines and stuff. But
that's really interesting to read it like that, and it does problematize the scene more, because I hadn't been really thinking through that lens. I'd been more thinking about, like, Sookie as the professional chef, and how it kind of flips, like, what you often might expect of, like, the woman's place is in the kitchen. Yet when it comes to, like, professional chefs, that's actually a quite masculine field, which is just so messed up, right? So I love that when they in the show, the professional chef is Sookie, in charge of everything, successful career, fantastic at what she does. So it's, like, funny for then Jackson to, though he is the masculine person in their relationship, he's the one who has to, like, force his way into the kitchen and be like, let me cook for you. Kind of like a reversal of some gender norms in a way. That then I was thinking, like, oh, it's so funny that she's so worked up about this, because he's trying, like, as he's saying, like, he's like, this is a nice gesture. You're supposed to be relaxed and drink wine. Damn it, Sookie, this is supposed to be romantic. And I'm going to cook and I'm going to clean. It's like the complete opposite of Rory and Dean before, right? When Rory was like, I have to, like, do the woman thing of cooking and cleaning. So I liked that, reading it through, like, the gender and, like, professional lens. But I think yours complicates that reading and brings a bit more nuance to it.
Yeah. I mean, I still absolutely enjoyed the scene, and I love their relationship, so I'm not, like, problematizing it, to say that Sookie and Jackson's relationship is bad, because I think it's the opposite of that. I think it's like them stepping forward into something, but this was a great scene.
We interrupt this podcast with a message from our sponsor.
Early birds get the worm, or in this case, the pancakes. Come to Luke's Diner before 7 a.m. and meet up with all the other early morning go-getters. At Luke's, we offer a homey dining experience complete with rules about cell phones at the table and reminders to eat your vegetables. And we've recently been refreshed with a dab of new paint.
For our early risers, we have a special deal that those who wake up after 9 on a Saturday just don't get. Mention Talking Fast podcast to Luke and get a personalized lecture about how listening to podcasts ruins our ability to cultivate real friendships, as if you've ever had one. But even better, you'll get endless coffee and a few extra blueberries in your pancakes, because we all know Luke likes a good rant first thing in the morning.
So come on in and take a seat wherever you can find one. Luke's is always packed early in the morning, and enjoy the view of Stars Hollow Square as the sun peeks over the horizon. And don't forget, mention Talking Fast for endless coffee and extra blueberries with a side of cynicism. We find out, strangely, that the only reason Lorelai is there is to ask to borrow Sookie's car, which seems super random, of course.
Yeah.
We have no idea what she's using it for.
Right.
She's very cryptic about it. She's kind of like how Rory was at the beginning, just not giving any information. But we find out that she is heading to Max's apartment. I don't remember. He must live in Hartford, I guess, where Chilton is, right?
And he has like a garden level apartment, which was surprising to me.
Yeah, the teacher's salary.
That's a great point, actually.
It's still really nice, though.
Yeah, it was.
But she knocks on the door, or rings the doorbell or whatever, and Max opens the door. They see each other. She kind of gives a bit of an explanation, like talking about how Rory had brought it up earlier about how long it takes to get over somebody, and Lorelai realized she couldn't give Rory a timeline because she wasn't over Max. And so basically she's just saying that she missed Max, and he invites her in.
Yes. And at this point, it cuts to other scenes. They're doing some very dramatic cuts to like escalate things. I thought in a fun way. It was very dramatic. But it cuts to them making out is the next scene we see between them, and making out. It's very steamy. And they keep trying to talk, but then they start to kiss again. I thought it was fun. It was showing how torn they are, honestly. Very horny as well. But also very intellectual, trying to figure out their issues in their relationship. But so Max sits them down. There's a coffee table in between him. He's like, okay, stop. We got to talk about this. And they talk a bit, but they ultimately say, we're still us and nothing's changed. You coming here is probably a bad idea. And they kind of just look at each other. And then he says, screw this. He knocks this entire little coffee table out between them. And they both stand up and start making out again.
So dramatic and romantic.
It was. Honestly, it's that, the epitome of the heat of the moment. And it's that line between, it was almost slightly, it was over the top, but it wasn't too over the top. If he'd thrown her on a table, I'd been okay, tone it back. But this was just the right amount of he could care less about his belongings right now. He's just so taken over by his lust and maybe passion or love for Lorelai too.
Strangely enough, I had my Rory's bookshelf.
Was it one of the books that got knocked off the table?
No, it was Lorelai randomly saying her showing up was kind of ding dong Avon lady calling.
Oh.
And I know that this is a cultural reference at large, Avon ladies and that whole multi-level marketing scheme that is still happening. But what it reminded me of is Edward Scissorhands. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Yes, I have.
But the mother in that is an Avon lady, and so she goes around, like, at the beginning of the movie doing Avon lady calling. And that's the whole way that she finds Edward Scissorhands up in the castle, is because she just wants to make that last sale, and she hasn't gone to this abandoned castle.
I wonder if anyone has ever analyzed that movie through, like, the politics of MLMs, you know, like, she felt so, you know, she was probably downline so far, and she really needed to make a certain number of sales that month, so she had to go risk her life at the scary house, and, like...
That's so true. That'd be a great example. Mm-hmm. But that's what that reminded me of.
That's
and
good.
There weren't very many other things.
I did a pretty out-of-the-box Rory's bookshelf as well later on, so I had a similar experience this episode.
So the next time we're back with Lorelai and Max is post-coitus. They are naked in bed. That classic scene. And again, they're just trying to talk about what's going to happen next. Mm-hmm. Lorelai says that they'll go home and eventually buy some soup, which is very accurate, I guess. Probably that will happen someday. But they end the conversation with, I think, a pretty good suggestion from Max, which is that they have just like a phone relationship for now and call each other often and talk about their relationship, which I think is a good compromise, because obviously they can't have the physical relationship that they want because Rory's still his student. Also, if they try to just go on dates, it's not like they could contain themselves according to these scenes. So I thought that was a pretty good compromise.
Yeah. I think we see from these, like, pretty sexy scenes that they can't, like, keep their hands off each other, basically. So I thought the phone thing was a very good, like you said, a good suggestion from Max. It seemed very mature, and it could allow them to develop that another, like, emotional side of their relationship, which I do think they had, like, when they started to date. They had great conversations that we saw, very witty and whatnot, but it does allow them to keep in touch without, you know, jumping back into something that would just go the way it did before, I think. So I liked that resolution.
It gives Rory a chance to move up to the next grade and potentially not be Max's student anymore, which would be great.
Yeah, but I think that is the last of Lorelai for this episode until the very end. So we can return to our Rory and Lane going to the Shilton party. And I don't know if we mentioned when Rory had asked Lorelai if she can take the car, if she can go to the party. Lorelai was like, why do you want to go to a Chilton party? But she didn't say no. She was like pretty encouraging of Rory. And she did suggest, though, why don't you take Lane in case, like, so you can have a friendly face with you, basically. I thought that was, like, fantastic advice from Lorelai. And it gave Rory such, like, a comfort zone and, like, a safety zone at the party to know, like, Lane was always there for her. I was like, such smart advice from Lorelai there.
Yeah, I kind of want to know what they told Mrs. Kim.
Yeah.
But probably that it was going to be a sleepover or something. But they did get the pass to go, which is great. And they show up at the party. The first people we see are the Madeline and Louise and Paris. Lane also did mention that the whole party looks like a teenage Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
Which is almost my Rory's bookshelf, because that's a great reference. But it's just a bunch of people. So, like, it doesn't really seem like there's alcohol. Nobody seems really drunk. And we don't see it happen, like, see kegs or anything like that. So it seems kind of like a tame party as far as they go.
Right. Or, like, what were they allowed to show on the show? I don't know, because I definitely think Madeline and Louise and that crowd would be underage drinking, if not more, like so much at
Yeah,
this
that's
party.
true.
If we get a sense of anything from like Logan and his friends later on, like you're not telling me they were just doing that at Yale, you know? Like they have no repercussions due to their privilege, so. But
That's
anyways,
true.
I thought it was like a fun setup of different little moments. The whole Rory and Lane navigating this completely different social world. Another fun fact that they discover is Paris is only there. I guess this is not a fun fact. This is a sad fact. Paris has been forced to go by her mom because she's saying she's not enough of like a people person and she has to stay until 10:30, which is like the opposite of a curfew. Paris has been told she needs to stay out late basically and can't come home sooner. I felt for her in that moment of having this parent who is really forcing her to be something that she's not. I don't know. It's just like, what would Paris be like if she had a more supportive parent, if she was allowed to just stay home? Because a lot of her characteristics we associate with her are like very like angry and things like that. And it's like, what if some of those sources of her anger were removed? I think she'd have a very different like life.
Yeah, I agree. Poor Paris should never be forced to go to a party. And I think we've kind of made almost similar points with Lorelai pressuring Rory to go to parties and stuff in the past, but it's never been to this degree. Like if Rory really didn't want to go, like to the dance, for example, Lorelai would have left it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been a problem. But poor Paris. I did think it was a good indication of their changing relationship that once Madeline and Louise left, Rory told Paris that she and Dean had broken up.
Yeah.
And Paris kind of said she was sorry to hear that and that kind of stuff. But I thought it was really interesting that she didn't want to say it in front of Madeline and Louise, who were the people that Lorelai originally thought were more friendly towards her. I think it's just another step on the Rory and Paris friendship, which is a great one.
I agree completely. While Rory and Paris are having a conversation, they witness this fight between Summer and Tristan, and it is worth noting that Summer gets a name in this episode. Like we just saw them making out last episode. And this was actually my Lorelai's Closet nomination, was Summer's dress. I thought it was cute. So it was like a royal blue dress, spaghetti straps, and it had kind of like a clear netting, or what would you describe that fabric as at the top? Do you remember?
Like a mesh kind of thing.
Yeah, but that mesh had like blue flowers embroidered on it. And then at the very end, you see later on, it goes about to like her knees, and there's a couple like ruffles at the end, but they're like loose. I don't know. I just liked the dress, and I liked Summer more too, actually. I think probably because she was like just antagonizing Tristan so much, which I loved. She was apparently caught by Tristan in the bathroom with another guy, and she's like, why do you care? Why are you giving me such a hard time? She calls Tristan a caveman and asks if he's going to hit her with a club and drag her back to his Porsche. Like, I just love that she was calling out Tristan so much. And she was just like, basically, she just, she wants to make out with the guys she wants to make out with. Last time it was Tristan. This time it's Austin. I support that side of her personality more than like her being rude to Paris earlier. So I was like, you know what? You go, girl. She breaks up with him later. I'm like a Summer fan, I think. This episode, at least.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think she was like making a lot of great points about how possessive Tristan is, how Tristan like kept insisting on calling her his girlfriend. We kind of get the idea that maybe Summer didn't want to be his girlfriend. She just wanted to hook up with him.
Right.
But Tristan obviously had different plans for them. So yeah, I liked that she humiliated him basically in front of everybody, which I had to wrestle with myself for a couple minutes, in a similar way that Rory does later, which I'll talk about. But like part of me wanted to feel bad for Tristan because we're giving him this sympathetic moment and everything.
Yeah.
But looking back at all the things he's done to Rory and just who he is, like, if he learned from this moment, that would be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think he does, and so I don't feel that bad for him. He's been a terrible person, so.
Yeah, I think they want us to feel sympathetic for him? I think so. They show him at like the piano, like alone in a room on a piano, looking very forlorn and very emo boy. I just thought, like, what a drama queen. Like, he's just creating such a scene for himself for like Rory to stumble. Just this like very beautiful image of him just at the piano tinkling on the keys.
My Friday night dinner moment was in the conversation that Rory and Tristan had in the piano room. So Tristan is there just plunking on keys and looking all sad boy and everything. Rory comes up and then Tristan apologizes to Rory for being a dick to her, which is good. He should do that.
Yeah.
And this is my qualm. Rory says, "That's okay." And Tristan says, "It is." And Rory says, "Well, no, but you're sad." And so this is what I wanted to critique. And I think it's something that women are often expected to do. And I had just caught myself doing it for Tristan as well, like wanting to feel bad for him because he was sad. But that doesn't, and it shouldn't erase the bad things that he's done in the past. And I think Rory here is forgetting how terrible he's been to her just because she doesn't want to see somebody in pain. And also because she's probably projecting her own pain onto that as well.
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, this is expected of women oftentimes. Going back to The Bachelor, but a lot of the time we see like contestants telling sob stories and stuff, and that's supposed to be the thing that makes the other person attracted to them. And I think it's often just like the woman wanting to, or the expectation that women want to comfort and like make everything okay. And I don't like it. We shouldn't be expected to do that for dicks like Tristan, even if he's cute.
Right. Or like the impulse to accommodate or smooth over, to not be difficult, like take up as little space and make as little trouble as possible. I definitely do see that present in Rory's like weird acceptance, I think, of the apology. I really wondered if she actually accepted the apology, like if the next day, if she would feel like she did forgive him. And I thought his apology was fairly like half-assed too. Like,
Yeah.
he said, "I'm sorry for giving you a hard time." So he does kind of like show an awareness of like what he did. It wasn't just like a blanket statement, but I mean, that's like just the bare minimum of like, yeah, I gave you a hard time. No other words about like, I don't know. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. You can kind of like hear in the implied second clause of that sentence, "Sorry I gave you a hard time. It's just because I like you." And that's not acceptable anymore. We're not okay with that.
Yeah. And I honestly think that, again, I'm not going to like try to psychoanalyze Rory or anything, but I think my theory, personal theory, you know, she's looking for Tristan. She knows he just got dumped. I think like part of it might be identifying with his pain, like feeling like he's in a similar situation to her. But I also think she's going to him because she knows he's the person that has like wanted her this entire time, aggressively so. But in this moment of just reeling from her pain and like the way that she phrases like explaining to Tristan that she's been broken up with, she's like, it was Dean's decision. He seemed firm in his decision. I feel like she's feeling unwanted or like discarded or not enough and all of these things. And so it's like this impulse to feel like this is the guy I could just go to and he's going to want me instantly. And I think she wants that kiss and she pulls away from it because I think, of course, like she reckons eventually with the fact like this is not what she wants. Like it was probably like that immediate, like, okay, this is like the gratification, someone wants me, we're kissing, and then the reward or the feeling she expected was not like safety or comfort or, you know, treasured to be treasured, but like, oh, this is just another dude I'm kissing. I still miss my like boyfriend. It's too soon. I'm gonna go home and cry. Like, yeah, that was my reading of this whole thing.
Yeah, it's probably also only the second person she's ever kissed. So
Yeah.
all of her making out experience has been with Dean, and here she's like experiencing a different sensation, I guess. So it might shock her a bit, you know.
Yeah. All hatred aside, I did think their first kiss was a more easy kiss to watch than her first kiss with Dean. But again, I think that's really just part of the territory of like, this is not her first kiss completely.
Yeah, overall, I hated it.
Yeah. This actually, I was briefly thinking about like Rory, as we like we're along with her at such a young age to experience a lot of these firsts with her. I was thinking just the other day about how like Dean was her first like sex encounter. That sounded so clinical. She had sex with Dean for the first time. And then I think the only other person we see throughout the series is with Logan, right? Until the revival. And I just was like, you know, I am Team Logan, but I just have to think like, I really think that was probably much of an improvement in her sex life to go from Dean to Logan. Like, there's not such emotional baggage there either. But you know, he's been around. I feel like he probably showed her a good time. But anyways.
Yeah, he's had practice for many years, whereas Dean, probably not.
Yeah.
He's also... Anyway, we'll get to that.
I'll dial it back. I was watching some YouTube interviews with Matt Zuckery. I learned how to say his name. The C is silent.
Oh, wow.
Zuckery.
I had no idea.
I've been a fan this entire time, and it was just that easy to just remove the C at the start. But I'll dial it back.
Well, you'll have more seasons with him than I'll have with Jess. So
that doesn't make me feel good, though, you know. But that's what it is, I suppose.
So... In the meantime, when all of this is happening with Rory and Tristan, Lane is having a great time. It starts out, though, with her freaking out because, as she says, the only other Korean guy at the party has his Korean radar on. And so he's found Lane. And she's freaking out because Henry is somebody that her parents might actually approve of. And after they've danced for the entire night, Lane actually really likes him as well. So this is a threat to her ability to rebel.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting component of the episode. It helps us, I think, sort out a few things we've questioned before about Lane and the various different Korean boys that she dates. And we've kind of questioned, like, why is she always like so against them? Are they all really truly like super boring? We've questioned like the representation of Korean guys. We've questioned like just the writing in general of like, isn't it like really lazy or just not nuanced to say they're all just the same kind of boring guy she's not into? So I loved first that like this goes against Lane's own expectations. Like she does like want to avoid him, but then she is totally surprised to know that she really likes him and that he's appealing to her. But she also had this, as you pointed out, she is very much like, this is a guy my parents would approve of. And I immediately thought, oh, this is a parent problem. This is a parent problem. Yeah. Like she doesn't have like necessarily like an aversion to all of the guys she's going on dates with, but it's more so her like chafing against the restrictions of her parents and their rules and expectations. And I think she's really projecting on to the guys like that whole her issues that really need to be sorted out with her parents, right? But I totally get the whole rebelling against your parents. I totally get the whole not wanting to date someone your parents like that's such a classic trope. Because he's cute, he's funny, he studies to be a doctor, he's involved in church, he speaks Korean, he's perfect for her family, which is so funny because she's like, yeah, how can I date someone who's perfect?
I also like that we've seen her attempt to have connections with guys before,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them have kind of been disastrous.
Yeah.
But I really liked their little romance. It
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of 10 Things I Hate About You, mostly just because of the party.
Yeah, she was more confident with him. And maybe it could be due to the fact that she's like, I'll give you one dance and I'm not interested in you. And that allowed her to not even have the crush stage immediately, because we've seen a lot of her like nerves come in when she does have crushes on people. So I like that she was really just more confident. I like that Rory checked in on her, because they'd said like Rory will pretend to be sick basically, and she's like, no, I think you just have allergies, like saying that Rory does not need to interrupt. So I liked their support system that they had throughout that party too.
Yeah, even at the very end, like, Lane clearly wants to stay and dance more with Henry, but she leaves because Rory's the top priority. Just another instance of their great friendship. Yeah, Henry does get her phone number, so we do get the potential for something more to happen.
She says he doesn't get the exact number. She's like, you can look up my name, Kim, and Stars Hollow. We're the only one. Which I think is just funny, because you imagine like New York City, thousands of Kims in the phone book probably, if not more, versus Stars Hollow, whitest town ever, only one last name of Kim in the town.
Yeah, it's also a great retro throwback to phone books.
Seriously.
Which I think that they are still distributed, but I haven't lived in a house for many years, so obviously don't get them. But I don't think many people even have landlines anymore, so this thing wouldn't work anymore. Right. But we also have much easier ways of exchanging phone numbers these days.
It's true. One thing before leaving the party recap, my Rory's Bookshelf nomination was in the midst of all of the different things we've discussed. And it's not really a book or anything like that, more so an action. I'm nominating Rory reading in the middle of this party. She goes and finds a quiet room, a really comfy looking chair. And I didn't actually even see like what book it was, but she just starts reading. And I respect this like book nerd dedication. And it reminded me of Richard, too, earlier when he kind of left the party, her birthday party, to go read on the porch. And in general, like, I would say I identify with this, not completely, because I would say, like, I can be fairly extroverted when it comes to, like, small groups of my friends. Like, these days, I don't go to like huge parties like this, but if we were to have gatherings, like I like to go talk to my friends. I wouldn't just like start reading in the middle of like a gathering of my friends. But like if I was in a place where I didn't really have control, or like, I don't know, it made me think back to like when I was younger, and I had to go to like a lot of different daycares because both of my parents worked. But I was like to the point where I was almost in junior high. And one summer, I was kind of annoyed with my parents that they wouldn't let me just stay home alone. This was like the last year I went to like a summer camp before, the next year I was old enough to stay home. And so as like protest that I was so annoyed I had to just go to this new summer camp, I just started to read like the entire time, because like my younger sisters went to the daycare, but in the summer they had like a group for older kids, and it was basically just like you would just hang out around, like there weren't really events or anything. So I just like sat in this chair and just read for a long time. And I was like, I'm not making new friends. I don't want to be here. I'm just gonna read. But I did eventually end up making friends, because that was the summer that everyone had like a DS. And everyone had either Mario Kart or the game Nintendogs. So we'd either like race each other, or we would like have our dogs meet up. So I eventually made friends. Wow. But I did use reading to ignore other people as a coping mechanism at one point in my life. So I liked this.
I have no idea what those games are. But I have also used reading as a coping mechanism, and I still do. But when I transferred to a new high school for my senior year, I feel like we talked about this. I had a whole bunch of free periods because my new school had less requirements. But I had to stay on campus, so I would just sit in the library. And at that time also, I refused to make new friends because it was my last year of high school. Yeah. I was pissed at my parents. I'm also not very extroverted in any way, so making friends is hard. But I just sat for all my free periods, which sometimes would be 5 out of the 7 hours of the school day.
Oh my God.
In the library reading. I probably read like 200 books that year or something. I just like went through all of them.
So did you have, it sounds like you had your free periods and then PE. For like those are the only
Yep.
that was your schedule.
Yeah. I had to take English, and one semester I took a math class, and then I took choir. And I'm pretty sure that was it. I'd fulfilled everything else. It was weird.
Okay. Our final scene of the episode, Rory and Lorelai get back together. And this last scene was my Stars Hollow moment as well. It's like a sadder one than I would typically pick for the whole cozy aesthetic. But I think it's a very important piece of the coziness and the warmness of Gilmore Girls is that support system that Lorelai and Rory have for each other. I just feel like to witness them together, their like closeness is so, it can just be so beautiful sometimes. And I thought this scene was really well done. I liked the parallelism of it too. Like the previous episode had been Rory saying like we broke up and Lorelai like silently going to hug her, and now this is Rory. She's like sitting on the couch looking really sad with like the biggest tub of ice cream I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm ready to wallow now. So it's parallel both because it's like the theme that's been going through this episode, but also I thought with like the way the last one ended, because Lorelai just like silently goes up to her, sits next to her, puts a pillow on her lap and tells Rory to like lean over and cry. She's kind of like rubbing her. She kisses her at one point. And then she doesn't even say anything to Rory, but she goes to order pizza, and like with all of the toppings. And I just thought it was so quintessential, like their relationship, and to think like, I'm sad for Rory in this moment, but there's like no better way for her to be comforted, I think, than like Lorelai. She just knows like what to do, and like that's so sweet.
Yeah, I also thought it was really great to see. We've never really, I guess maybe when in the beginning when Rory and Dean had just started going out and Max and Lorelai had just started going out, but we've never really seen them both be in happy relationships at the same time yet. Maybe a little bit here and there, but this is like right after a huge moment in Lorelai's relationship with Max, and I'm sure she's like still on cloud 9 when she walks in the door.
That's a good point.
But she sees Rory in this state and just like automatically turns it into comforting mode. And she doesn't mention anything about Max. She like realizes that it's not the right time. Yeah, I liked this moment. It was very sad. I'm also astounded that Ben and Jerry's comes in a size larger than a pint. I've never seen it as more than a pint, and that was like a gallon.
I know. How much would that have cost? Because Ben and Jerry's is expensive, in my opinion. Like, my parents would never let me buy like pints of ice cream like Ben and Jerry's, because they were like, it's not a good value. You should get like the full size of a less cool brand. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sounding angry now because, of course, I wanted Ben and Jerry's, right? But the other ice cream is perfectly delicious. It's just like, yeah. And how much would that take up in their freezer, too? Like, it was like a gallon of ice cream. I have, like, we rent, and often when you're renting, you don't get a choice of what your fridge is. And our, like, freezer is not big enough at all for 2 people at where I live, and I'm just like, if we had that gallon of ice cream, we wouldn't have anything else in our freezer.
Yeah. They probably just have the 2 gallons of ice cream and then those frozen pizza bites or whatever they've gotten, and that's like the only food that they have.
Yeah, pretty much. That sounds about right.
But I guess we'll see what happens next week, obviously. But we'll see how Max and Lorelai are going. And
yeah, I'm curious to see where this goes, because we're in the portion of the season that I have no memory of, I'm discovering. So it's always new and exciting for me every week.
There's like one scene that I'm sure happens soon But other than that, yeah, I can't remember. I'm just a blank until Jess shows up next season,
Right.
which will be great.
Yeah. So, listeners, if you are, following along the season with us, this is a sign that you should send a gazebo moment sooner rather than later, because if you're like us, you might forget it really fast. So you can send that gazebo moment to our email, talkingfastpodcast@gmail.com, and we welcome a voice memo or a typed up, like a written message as well. So we can include that in a season finale kind of episode as we retrospectively look back on all of season 1.
And you can also follow us on Instagram at Talking Fast Podcast. And if you want to, you can comment on our gazebo moment posts on Instagram with your gazebo moments to be included in that episode as well.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to go get some ice cream.
Yep,
See you next week.
See you next time.